In every city, there are stories that never made the papers. Not because they weren't important, but because they were inconvenient. They live in forgotten files, in half-finished investigations, in questions no one wanted answered. This isn't where justice always wins. This is where the echoes remain. This is Reverberating Noir. The footsteps on the stair were not the sound of a guest returning to his room. They were measured, deliberate, a heavy, purposeful tread in the silent, cold night of Kyoto. The year is 1867. The month, the 11th of the old lunar calendar. The place a modest inn called the Maya. And inside that second-floor room, two men who had reshaped the future of a nation were about to have that future, and their lives violently stolen. One of them was Sakamoto Ryoma, the other Nakaoka Shintaro.
To understand why someone would slaughter them in their sleep, you must feel the fever of the Bakumatsu. The Tokugawa shogunate, that 250-year-old edifice, was cracking. Foreign gunships had forced the ports open. The very concept of Japan was being torn apart by a single, screaming question: how do we survive? Sakamoto and Nakaoka had an answer. They weren't just rebels. They were architects of a coalition. They brokered the impossible alliance between Satsuma and Choshu. They lobbied for a parliamentary government. They saw Japan with steamships and diplomacy, not just swords and seclusion. To the dying regime, they weren't just opponents. They were existential threats. They were the future, walking around in the present, and the present was trying to kill them.
The door didn't open. It was shattered. The assassins poured in. There was no warning, no parley. This was an execution. Sakamoto, we're told, fought. Nakaoka, the fierce warrior, fought. Their bodyguard, Yamada Tokichi, died instantly. But Sakamoto Ryoma was cut down in moments. The light of his thinking, his plotting, his dreaming gone in a flash of steel. Nakaoka Shintaro was left mortally wounded. And, as the assassins disappeared back into the Kyoto night, they left behind not a confession, not a calling card, but a man dying in a pool of his own blood, with 2 days to speak.
2 days. A lifetime for a testimony. And his testimony, according to every surviving account, was a single, gasping clue. As his life bled out, Nakaoka tried to name his killers. He said they spoke with the accent of Iyo, the old name for a region on the island of Shikoku, a dialect, not a name, not a face, a sound. In the rigid clan-based world of the samurai, where a man's accent could betray his home domain and his lord, that sound was a map. It pointed away from the heart of the shogunate's power and toward the periphery. It was the first and only direct human evidence from the scene, and it would ignite a firestorm of confusion that still burns today.
The immediate, instinctive suspicion fell on the most famous killers in Kyoto, the Shinsengumi, the elite special police directly serving the shogun. Their commanders, Kondo Isami and Hijikata Toshizo, were legends of ruthless efficiency. They had tried to kill Sakamoto before. They saw him as their ultimate prey. The narrative was obvious, convenient, and terrifying. The rock stars of the old regime had silenced its greatest critic. When the Meiji Restoration succeeded, the new government needed villains. They found them in the Shinsengumi. Kondo was hunted down and executed in 1868. For over a century, the story was settled. The Shinsengumi did it. Case closed.
But it was never closed, because in 1870, 2 years after Kondo's execution, another group made a claim. A quiet, persistent, deeply inconvenient claim. They were the Mimawarigumi, another special police force, organized separately. They were based in Osaka and Kyoto. The critical detail? Their recruits, it was said, came heavily from masterless samurai ronin from the domains of Ki and Tosa. And those dialects were mutually intelligible with the Iyo dialect Nakaoka identified. The very clue he whispered in his agony was perfectly, chillingly consistent with the Mimawarigumi's alleged composition. They stated they acted under the direct orders of the shogunate's Kyoto magistrate Matsudaira Sadaaki. Their leader, they said, was Imai Nobukatsu. The dialect matched. The chain of command was clear. They were the official assassins.
So we are left with a haunting fork in the road. Path 1. The Shinsengumi. Famous. Feared. Motivated by years of personal and political vendetta. Already judged and punished by history. Path 2. The Mimawarigumi. Less famous, but a perfect linguistic fit for the only testimony. Operatives of the shogunate's administrative arm, not its famed shock troops, a perfect, unsolvable dichotomy.
And this is where the dread truly sets in. Not from the violence of that night, but from the violence done to the truth afterwards. Let's examine the evidence dispassionately. The dying declaration, a regional accent. It is not a fingerprint. It does not name Imai or Kondo. It points to a place, and both units had men from places where that accent was spoken. Motive and opportunity, both had it in abundance. Sakamoto Ryoma was enemy number 1 for the entire shogunate security apparatus in Kyoto. The procedural black hole. There was no proper impartial investigation. The shogunate fell. The new Meiji government was busy hunting its enemies, building a new state. They did not conduct a forensic audit of which old regime police unit had committed which murder 2 years prior. They were writing a new narrative. They needed a clear villain for their heroic origin story. The Shinsengumi fit the role perfectly. The political utility. Elevating the Mimawarigumi creates a messy complication. It suggests the killing was a bureaucratic order, not a roguish act of vengeance. It dilutes the purity of the evil Shinsengumi myth that the victors crafted. Most serious historians, the ones who sift through the contradictory diaries and posthumous allegations, they do not give a verdict. They lean toward the Shinsengumi based on the sheer weight of circumstantial tradition and their known prior attempts on Sakamoto's life. But, and this is the crucial, terrifying, but the Mimawarigumi claim is a gaping hole in that tradition. It cannot be disproven. The very evidence used to condemn the Shinsengumi Nakaoka's Iyo dialect is what the Mimawarigumi used to absolve them and accuse themselves. The question becomes, why would a defeated obscure unit wait 2 years in a world where the Meiji government was executing Shinsengumi remnants to step forward and claim responsibility? Was it a bid for historical recognition? A final, feudal act of loyalty? Or was it the last, desperate chance to tell the truth before the victor's story became permanent law?
The historical record, as it stands, is not a conclusion. It is a shrug. A sophisticated, evidence-based, profoundly frustrating shrug. The assassinations of Sakamoto, Ryoma, and Nakaoka Shintaro are officially unsolved. We have 2 brilliant young architects of modernity dead in a Kyoto inn. We have a dying man's clue about an accent. We have 2 ruthless police units with equal means and motive. And we have a new government that chose a story over an investigation. The truth was the first casualty of the revolution's aftermath.
And that is why this matters. Not as a puzzle to be solved for sport, but as a case study in how history is manufactured. The Shinsengumi did its story is powerful because it is simple. It gives us clear heroes and clear villains. It makes the birth of modern Japan a clean, dramatic conflict. The Mimawarigumi claim is the persistent cough in the back of the room. It is the historical equivalent of a mismatched fiber, an anomaly that says, the official record is the record of the victors. It was written to consolidate power, to simplify chaos, to forge a national myth. In that blank space where the killer's name should be, we see the true cost of that simplification. We see the forgotten agents of a forgotten order who may have carried out the most consequential murder of the era and vanished without a trace. Their anonymity is the point. It is the void that proves the narrative is a construct.
The room is silent now. The mere inn is gone. The samurai are dust, but the echo remains. It echoes in every textbook that names the Shinsengumi without caveat. It echoes in every film that shows Kondo's sword rising over Sakamoto's form. That echo is the sound of a question mark written in blood on the first page of modern Japan, a question mark that asks, what happens to the truth when a new world is being born from the ashes of the old? What gets buried? What gets forgotten? The terrifying answer is, we may never know, and the fact that we don't, that we can't, is the story itself. the reverberation.
The most disturbing detail is not the murder. It is the years of silence that followed. The deliberate, collective choice to let one story become the only story. The realization that the most famous unsolved murder in Japanese history was, in a very real sense, solved by the wrong people for the right reasons, and that the price of that solution was the truth itself.
If this glimpse into the shadows of history unsettled you, if it left you with that cold, familiar feeling of a door left ajar in a dark room, then you understand us. This is Reverberating Noir. We don't close cases. We examine the fractures in the record, the silences in the story, and the haunting questions that outlive the answers.
The investigation, like the echo, never truly ends.
The recording ends here, but the case doesn't. Somewhere, the evidence still exists. The questions still wait. If this story stayed with you, if it followed you into the silence, subscribe to Reverberating Noir. Not for us, for the stories that refuse to disappear.
Because as long as something doesn't make sense, the truth is still out there. And someone will find it.
Until next time, keep listening to the dark.